Hi. The paper was sitting on the kitchen island when I got home. One sheet, next to her open laptop. Not buried, not hidden, laid out in plain view. That was the first signal. Partner value assessment. The heading hit me squarely. Below it, a chart. Categories: attractiveness, drive, financial contribution, emotional intelligence, ambition. Numbers in her pen. 6, 5, 3, 4, 2. At the bottom, final score, 4 out of 10. And in the margin, her handwriting. Discuss with coach next session. I read it twice, the first time in disbelief, the second with a slow, cold clarity settling in. A score. On me. Framed like an employee review. Discuss with coach. I didn't need to guess what kind of coach this was. She'd mentioned her empowerment circle a few times lately. I nodded, distracted, assuming it was harmless. Now I wasn't so sure. I placed the sheet flat on the counter, staring at it as if the numbers might shift. But they didn't. 4 out of 10. A failing grade. The kind of evaluation you write when you're preparing to justify a change. Who was this written for? Why rate me at all? Unless she was building a case to leave. No rage yet. Just a kind of humiliation that pressed deep beneath the skin. I had supported her from the start, through grad school, her first shaky years as a consultant, buying this house. We'd built everything together. Now I was a liability she was documenting. A few weeks ago, she'd been talking about us planning a trip for the fall. Smiling. Reaching for my hand at dinner. Just last weekend, we'd had friends over for wine. I replayed those moments now. Normal scenes performed over a foundation already shifting beneath me. It would be easy to march upstairs, confront her, demand an explanation. That was the first instinct. But another part of me, older, sharper, stopped the impulse cold. If she was thinking of leaving, or worse, positioning herself for an exit, I couldn't afford to show my hand. Not yet. Patience mattered now. Information mattered. I folded the sheet neatly and slid it under a folder in my briefcase. My pulse stayed steady. The best advantage I had was that she didn't know I'd seen it. I waited downstairs. The paper wasn't an accident. If she left it out, either she was careless or she wanted to provoke a reaction. I wouldn't give her either. An hour later she came home, coat over her arm, tote bag slung across her shoulder, phone in hand. She moved through the house like any other night. Light smile. Kiss on the cheek. "How was your day?" she asked, casual. "Busy," I answered, voice even. "You?" "Great. Strategy session ran long. Amazing insights tonight." Her eyes were bright, energized, no trace of guilt. She poured a glass of wine, sat across from me, and talked about new ideas from her circle. I listened carefully, every word weighed, every gesture noted. She was speaking like someone preparing for something bigger than self-improvement. Subtle shifts in language. "I've been thinking a lot about what I really want, and it's important to know your value." She had no idea I knew about the score, and that was my leverage, for now. When she went upstairs to shower, I sat in silence. This wasn't a phase. This was a plan. I wouldn't confront. I wouldn't react. I would observe. I would gather. And when the time came, I would be ready. The first slip came sooner than I expected. 3 nights after I'd found the partner value sheet, she came home late, close to midnight. A text had arrived around 10:30. Strategy session ran long. Incredible guest speaker. Too polished. Too bright. When she finally walked in, hair tousled, coat over her arm, shoes in hand, she was practically glowing. Breathless apology. "It just went so late, we got caught up." A quick kiss on the cheek. Straight to the shower. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to, not yet. The next morning, after she left for her bar class, I opened the printer tray to grab a contract draft for work. That's when I saw it, half stuck beneath the feeder, curled at the corner. Empowered Women Exit Checklist. Even before I read it, my pulse slowed. The title alone was enough. I slid it out carefully, unfolded it on the counter. The bullet points were direct. Separate finances. Document emotional failings. Build post-separation network. Frame independence narrative. Every line a loaded step in an exit plan. This wasn't personal growth. This was preparation for legal and reputational war. I read it twice, each pass tightening the cold knot in my chest. The checklist explained her recent shifts perfectly. Separate finances. Lately she'd been talking more about my money, my assets. Document emotional failings. I recalled her mentioning journaling for her coach, another casual moment now reframed. Build post-separation network, all these late nights at the circle, frame independence narrative, the new books, the sudden obsession with owning her story, not a phase, a plan. And the most chilling part, it was already in motion. I folded the page carefully, slid it into the same secure folder with the partner value sheet. My mind was turning fast now, not with panic, but strategy. She hadn't just thought about leaving. She was positioning herself to win the exit. That afternoon, I began a new encrypted file, exit activity log. 2 entries so far. There would be more. The days that followed sharpened the pattern. She was radiant, more energized than I'd seen her in months. Late nights, strategy dinners, coaching sessions. Always coming home flushed and upbeat, talking about personal breakthroughs, and thinking bigger. I listened. I watched. At dinner one night she raised a glass. To new beginnings. I smiled, clinked her glass, said nothing. Another evening I caught a glance at her calendar while she typed on her laptop. A series of empowerment circle meetings, one-on-one coaching calls, and curiously vague advisory sessions. The next morning, over coffee, she mentioned casually, "I've been thinking a lot about financial independence. It's important for both of us." I nodded, kept my tone light. "Of course. Makes sense." Inside, the equation was already forming. She was preparing to divide the life we built, financially, socially, legally, and framing the narrative to support it. False normalcy set in with chilling precision. One evening we had old friends over for drinks. She laughed easily, touched my arm, played the perfect hostess. No sign of distance, no overt hostility. Watching her, I realized this was performance now. A staged front while the back end of her life was being quietly recoded. The next night she texted sweetly from her circle's dinner. "Miss you! Late again but such great energy." I texted back, "Glad you're having fun. See you soon," and logged it. By the end of that week, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Confrontation would serve her plan. Silence would serve mine. Each false smile, each casual kiss, each glowing strategy, story only strengthened my resolve. I would not tip my hand. I would gather. I would prepare. And when the time came, I would strike first. There's a discipline to real investigation. You don't chase everything at once. You move methodically, line by line, risk by risk. No tech tricks. No GPS trackers. No phone cloning. Too obvious. Too dangerous if exposed. And too easy to frame as controlling behavior. Exactly the kind of ammunition her checklist encouraged her to collect. Instead, I started with what was safe, what was legal, what she had already forgotten to guard. First, the finances. We always used a shared drive for tax prep. That was her idea, one folder, so we could both upload documents during the year for the accountant. I opened it late one night, while she was asleep upstairs. The pattern was immediate. Our joint accounts were as expected: salary, dividends, expense flows. But now there was a new folder labeled simply personal. Inside, a 1099 from a side consulting project I didn't recognize. A bank statement header, First Freedom Credit Union. Not one of our banks. She had opened a new solo account, quietly, without mentioning it. Cross-referencing dates, I could see the deposits had started 2 months ago. Small at first, then larger. Side income, redirected. A classic first step in financial separation. I logged it. Took discrete screenshots. Moved to the next layer. Second, language shift. I began listening with new ears. At dinner. "I've been thinking more about my money lately. It's empowering." Over coffee. "I want to make sure my assets are properly protected." In front of friends. "I'm building a more independent portfolio now." Each phrase another quiet flag. Each a signal that the joint frame of our marriage, our finances, our life, was being strategically reframed. She was also suddenly full of book recommendations. "You should read this," she said one night, sliding over a title, Navigating High-Asset Divorce. Another on her nightstand, Reclaiming Power, Women, Wealth, and the New Independence. I thanked her, smiled, logged the titles. She had no idea I'd already started my own reading, on asset protection, strategic divorce prep, and reputation risk management. Third, external observation. I never pried into her phone or devices. Too high a risk profile. Instead, I used a better channel, Human intelligence. People talk. One afternoon at the firm, a colleague I trusted, call him Dan, mentioned seeing her at a restaurant downtown. Networking dinner? He asked casually. She looked deep in conversation with some guy. Thought she was visiting her sister that night. I kept my tone neutral. Oh? Must have been a last-minute change. Dan shrugged. Just struck me. It matched perfectly. That night she texted me. Family dinner, might stay late. I thanked him later with a quiet nod, and logged the anomaly. As the investigation deepened, the emotional cost rose with it. I couldn't walk through our house without hearing echoes, her laughter in the kitchen as we unpacked boxes our first year here. The patio we built together one hot summer weekend, her late nights building her consulting practice, me bringing her coffee, telling her she could do this. I'd backed her through every risk, every dream. Now that support was being twisted, not just for personal separation, but as a positioning tool against me. Every memory became sharper, heavier. Another reminder that the person across the table was already treating me as an opponent. And yet, she still smiled easily, kissed my cheek, texted little hearts in the middle of her strategy nights. False normalcy. A chilling mask. By the end of the second week, I'd built out the first layers of my file. New personal bank account opened. Language shift to individual asset framing. High asset divorce materials in active use. False alibi for external dinner. Social circle now deeply embedded in empowerment network. I didn't feel victorious. I felt cold, focused. She was executing a structured exit, and now I was building my counter. The game had shifted. From suspicion to strategy. From reaction to preemption. Until this point, I'd seen her plan as personal, a financial and social repositioning for divorce. That alone was enough to warrant caution, but it wasn't the whole game. The deeper threat surfaced through the last channel I'd expected, corporate intelligence. It started with an innocuous email. Our corporate counsel, Keller, a sharp attorney I trusted, flagged a casual report from a mutual contact. Nothing official. Just a line at the end of an unrelated memo. FYI, heard X was seen having lunch with Nathan Cole recently. Could be nothing. Nathan Cole. That name pulled me up short. Nathan had tried to buy a stake in my company last year. Aggressively. He'd come at us with charm and capital, promising partnerships, connections, the usual pitch. But beneath the surface, he wanted control, and I'd shut the door on him hard. Now my wife was having private lunches with him. I called Keller directly. How solid is that sighting? 2 separate reports, he said. Same lunch spot, same day. I thought you should know. My gut reaction was swift. This wasn't coincidence. Nathan didn't network for fun. If he was at lunch with her, he wanted something. And if she'd agreed to meet, especially now, in this phase of her personal positioning, there was a reason. I cross-referenced what I'd already observed, the sudden asset separation, the exit checklist, the new advisory sessions on her calendar. It clicked. She wasn't just preparing to leave. She was preparing to leverage information. Information about me. About the company. About pending deals. And the timing couldn't have been worse. We were on the verge of a major investment round, one that would raise our valuation substantially and lock in new strategic partnerships. If Nathan could poison that process, discredit me, or surface selective failures, it would crater the valuation and weaken my negotiating position during separation. It wasn't just about leaving me. It was about weakening me before she did. The emotional hit landed harder than any financial one. I had backed her from day one. She'd been at the kitchen table with me the night I filed the company's incorporation papers. I'd walked her through our first growth forecasts, shared every win and loss. She had celebrated every contract we closed. Now she was feeding information to the one person who had most aggressively tried to undermine us. Every memory of those early days twisted cold. That night, we sat across from each other at dinner. She was bright-eyed, relaxed, talking about a new speaking engagement her circle had encouraged her to book. No mention of Nathan. No mention of the lunch. I watched her, forcing calm into every breath. This was no longer just a marriage unraveling. This was corporate undermining. The no-going-back moment came 3 days later. Through Keller, I confirmed a second meeting, off books, quiet, a mentoring coffee, downtown with Nathan. We also picked up whispers in corporate circles. Possible instability in leadership. At my firm. The kind of planted rumor designed to spook new investors. That was the pivot point. She was timing her exit to coincide with the new round, knowing that if she could crater my valuation, she could cripple my financial and legal position in the divorce. This wasn't theory anymore. It was a strategic conflict. No going back. No illusions. She was going to move first. I would counter decisively. The decision point was absolute. No more observation. No more patient logging. It was time to act. Step 1. Legal protection. I retained one of the most discreet and ruthless corporate divorce attorneys on the West Coast, a specialist Keller recommended quietly. Everything was done under an airtight NDA. No paper trail through personal channels. No obvious billing lines. All communication routed through legal privilege. She would not see this coming. Step 2. Corporate firewalling. I initiated a silent tightening of internal controls, nothing drastic enough to spook the team, but enough to choke off any casual information flow. Key document access restricted to inner circle only. Sensitive deal conversations moved to encrypted side channels. Audit trails activated. If any leak attempt happened again, I would know the source and the timing. She'd been too close to my world for too long. That access had now ended. Step 3. IP protection. Over the next 72 hours, I moved the crown jewels. Our core IP, licenses, patents, strategic frameworks, were quietly transferred to an irrevocable trust, outside the reach of marital assets. Perfectly legal. Perfectly timed. By the time her side looked for leverage, they would find air and shadows. Step 4. Financial repositioning. Joint accounts? Locked. Personal funds? Relocated legally into protected vehicles. Asset exposure? Minimized. I documented everything, timestamped every move. Not one action outside the lines. No hiding. Just strategic repositioning ahead of an openly declared separation. I wasn't running. I was preparing the battlefield. Outwardly, I was flawless. I played the attentive husband, the supportive partner. We had dinner with friends, attended a gallery event. I even booked us a weekend getaway, her idea, designed to maintain appearances. I watched every move, every word, logged everything, smiled constantly. Inside, I was already 3 steps ahead. The final strike, legal prepositioning. With my counsel, I filed intent to legally separate corporate holdings from marital property, preemptively, on clean legal grounds backed by precedent. By the time her team drafted their playbook, most of what they wanted would already be structurally outside their grasp. The emotional weight was real. Sitting across from her night after night, watching her talk about next steps, and owning her narrative, I felt the old grief rising. I remembered late nights where we'd built this company together, her with her laptop, me with financial models spread across the table. The trips we skipped, the sacrifices we made. Now those sacrifices were a target. The person I had once trusted most was preparing to dismantle my life's work as part of her exit. And yet, each smile, each toast, each warm hand on my arm now only fueled my resolve. She thought she was in control. She had no idea the floor had already shifted beneath her feet. She chose the restaurant, high-end, minimalist, her current favorite for celebrating growth. She sent the reservation link 3 days in advance with a bright, "Let's do something special this weekend, just us." A victory lap dinner. She believed her timing was perfect, that I was still in the dark, that her narrative was about to unfold exactly as planned. I arrived 5 minutes early. Slim envelope in my jacket pocket, the final set. Inside, the empowered exit checklist she'd left in the printer tray, the documentation of her financial transfers, the verified meeting logs with Nathan Cole, a formal legal filing summary, IP protected, corporate assets secured, and on top, a crisp copy of her partner value assessment, with one new line added in clear type. Asset security 0/10. She arrived glowing. A tailored black dress. Confident stride. The perfect blend of elegance and casual command. She kissed my cheek. "You look great." "You too," I said evenly. We ordered wine. Talked lightly through appetizers. She led the conversation. Her new insights. The power of choosing your path. A monologue wrapped in empowerment language. I watched, measured calm. She truly believed she had won already. Dessert arrived. Her smile widened. That's when I reached into my jacket and set the envelope on the table between us. No theatrics. No raised voice. Just a simple motion. Her smile faltered slightly. "What's this?" she asked, tone still light, but eyes narrowing. I met her gaze. You ran a test, I said quietly. So did I. Mine finishes first. She hesitated, then opened the envelope. First, the checklist. Her breath caught barely. Next, the financial transfer records. Her fingers stilled. Then, the meeting logs. Finally, the legal filings, corporate protections already in place. And at the top of the stack, her partner value assessment. With asset security, 0/10 typed below her original scoring grid. The color drained fractionally from her face. She looked up. You've been observing, I said evenly. Documenting. Preparing. Just as you have. She drew a breath, the first tremor in her control showing. This isn't, she started, then shifted tactics. Softer now. I think you're misinterpreting some of this. I shook my head, voice calm. No, I'm not. The checklist is yours. The transfers are yours. The meetings with Nathan, confirmed. And the filings? Already processed. Legally protected. I held her gaze. You planned a clean break, I said, and a strategic strike. You timed it to crater my valuation ahead of your move. I know. And now? That window is closed. Her lips parted. Another attempt to pivot the narrative, but I leaned in slightly. I'm filing, I said. Divorce papers. Protections are in place. Nathan is blacklisted. Any future buy-in attempt will be dead on arrival. And your professional reputation? I paused. Already addressed through counsel. Attempts to sabotage corporate valuation have consequences. For the first time, she didn't speak. The mask cracked, just slightly. Eyes wider. Shoulders tenser. The perfect narrative fraying at the edges. I let the silence stretch. Finally, she reached for her wine. A tremor in her hand. I didn't expect this, she said quietly. I know, I answered. That was your mistake. The check arrived. I paid. We walked out in silence. At the curb, she tried one last soft angle, voice low. Maybe we can still. I shook my head. There's no going back, I said. You made sure of that. Then I turned and left. The formal filing went through the following week. Clean. Controlled. No surprises left for her team to exploit. She didn't contest the terms, she couldn't. The corporate protections were airtight, the asset structures legally beyond reach. Her best plays had already failed before she'd even made them. But the real fallout wasn't in the filings. It started where she didn't expect, inside her own circle. Word travels fast in certain networks. Her empowerment circle had its own internal hierarchy. Driven women, some with deep ties to legal and corporate worlds. They supported exits, yes, but they didn't tolerate exposure. And they didn't tolerate actions that could damage their own reputations. Once Nathan's name came up, once it became clear she'd attempted to leverage confidential corporate information, putting others at risk, the cracks appeared fast. Two of her closest allies distanced immediately. One pulled out of a joint project they'd been planning. Another cut her out of a speaking engagement circuit. The message was clear, she'd overreached. And in doing so, she'd endangered not just her own playbook, but the credibility of the very group that had empowered her. Legal consequences followed. Keller, working with corporate counsel, filed breach of fiduciary duty claims tied to her attempted collusion with Nathan. Nathan, when faced with exposure and potential liability, folded fast, disavowed the meetings, threw her under the bus in a formal statement. Financial penalties stacked quickly. Her negotiating power evaporated. Publicly, the story never broke wide. But inside the circles that mattered, she was toxic. Potential clients? Vanished. Speaking gigs? Pulled. Consulting deals she'd been cultivating? Quietly walked back. And me? I kept what mattered. Company intact. Core assets secured. Settlement liability minimized to a fraction of what she'd expected. Reputation unscathed. If anything, reinforced. Word had spread quietly that I'd handled the storm with precision and calm. The personal toll was real. Thank you for watching. Bye.